Welcome to the Authority Podcast. My guest today is Eugene Moreau. Eugene is a father, husband, author, speaker, and lover of fish and chips. For the last 14 years, he has shared life and dreams with his lovely wife, Cherie, and has been inspired to write 4 books and release numerous audio programs, but not without challenges and hurdles. Eugene, where did it all begin?
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands.
That's a great question. I think my earliest childhood memory is I was 7 years old and we were in Louisville, Colorado. And my parents were taking a nap on a Sunday afternoon and I snuck outside because I heard something about a group called the Beatles who had come to the Rocky Mountains. And I was standing outside in Louisville, Colorado, looking up into the Rocky Mountains, seeing if I could see them. That was one of my very earliest memories. We arrived in New Zealand.
So hang on a second. You didn't know if they were a band?
Oh, I had no idea who they were.
You were just thinking, what is this thing?
Yeah, I just heard a news thing.
Wow, okay.
I actually love the Beatles.
Yeah.
I think they're one of the most influential, iconic forces that our world has ever seen.
Absolutely.
Cultural change happened as a result of them. But I can't go into the science of it. I just know there's a Sgt. Pepper's changed the world.
Yeah.
I think in '67, I'm 6 decades. So I just celebrated my 60th birthday a couple weeks ago, and
Awesome.
it was a time of reflection. You look back, and 6 decades have gone by, and you think, what have I got to show for this? So I look back in my childhood, and 1967, my dad received a call. I'm a man of faith, and so I believe that God has a lot to do with our life, and so God called my dad to New Zealand as a missionary. We did not know anyone when we arrived. This was probably the single most catalytic moment in my young life. We arrived on August the 28th, 1969, and we just celebrated 50 years, just a month ago.
Wow.
So we've been in New Zealand for 50 years. And that was a profound moment. You know, 5 of us, I was 10 years old, just shy of 10 years old.
So there was 5 kids, you had 4 siblings?
There's 3 of us and mom and dad.
Oh, I see, okay, yep.
So, and we were landed on top of Queen Street outside what was the Railton Hotel, which was a Salvation Army hotel. We walked up that long driveway. We got a bed, one room with 2 single beds, and guess who got those? It wasn't me. And that was the beginning of our life here in New Zealand. My very first meal in New Zealand was baked beans on toast. I'd never had baked beans on toast. It was a fascinating journey. The first place we lived was Kelston, and I began to experience being a foreigner in a different country.
So you were how old when you...
I was just 1 month shy of my 10th birthday.
Okay.
It was about that time that I found my gifting in life. I began to experience something at the age of 10 and 11 that I didn't know I had. And that was the ability to stand in front of an audience or to engage an audience and tell stories and engage with them and shape things.
So this happened in the church?
This happened actually in school.
In school, okay. So it was a school production or...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I found out that I loved acting, so wasn't good at it, but I loved it. But that early stage of my life was heavily influenced by my dad, who was a reasonably good preacher. He wasn't, we call conference level. Conference preaching has a unique shape and quality to it. It's very much like the best TED Talk.
Sure.
There's a difference between an experienced TED Talk professional and someone who goes and speaks at a $75 seminar, for 20 minutes and stumbles their way through it. So Dad wasn't a TED Talk specialist, but he was a very good researcher. and a very good speaker. My mother was the emotional side of the speaker. So I had speakers on both sides of me. And I would watch and observe. But at the age of about 12, I think it was, I was asked by my dad to start doing what we called tape ministry, which was we would take reel-to-reels that tapes that had been sent to us of speakers and missionaries and conferences, and transfer them over to cassettes, and then distribute these cassettes. So I had like a dozen cassette players, recorders, lined up and connected, and I would go from reel to reel to each one, and I would create these, that was our mass production. And I would do hundreds of tapes. So I'd be listening to these tapes. And then I would take others and I would take them to my bedroom and I would take notes on the way they would structure. If a message appealed to me, I would listen to it over and over again. And I was, how did they do that? What's the structure? How did they segue into that? That's just fascinating. Wow, that story was incredible. And I would look at the way they shaped and structured them. And so I was 12 and 13 years old doing this. And it fascinated me. And so I started reading speeches. Presidential speeches.
So you're reading them like just in your bedroom?
Yeah,
or
just reading them. Yeah, just reading them. I loved reading. Reading was fascinating to me. Reading was a school to me. I was a useless school student. School bored me. School did my head in, but I loved reading. So I would read everything from comic books through to Louis L'Amour novels, cowboy western. I would just read.
Do you think you loved learning, but you wanted to learn what you wanted to learn?
I think that's the hallmark. It's a really good point. I think that's a hallmark of someone with ambition. I was an ambitious young man. I was not satisfied being normal. I did not want to be lumped in the average group. One of the things that I enjoyed about being an American in 1969 and 70, 71, and 72 was there weren't a lot of other Americans around. I look back on that at the time. That's not arrogance. That's just understanding distinction.
Sure.
So what is the one thing that I could do that I could actually leverage as a brand? And so when I began my business, and I'll come back in a second. When I began my business in 1990, or 1991, I leveraged off the fact that I traveled in the States professionally, speaking in churches as a speaker, and I coached speakers, and I'm an American. That got me into more audiences and more CEOs than anything else.
So that did you notice almost a switch in the mind when you're, say, pitching someone, hey, listen, I'm on the circuit, or I'm preaching, to American audiences?
To me, there was a credibility there. There was a credibility factor. I had a story that no one else here at that time in New Zealand had. That's what allowed me to establish my first brand, which we'll get to, I'm sure, in this conversation. So when I was 14, I was mowing the lawn one day, and my dad came and tapped me on the shoulder, and he said, turn it off. He said, in a couple weeks' time, we've got a big combined service. We're bringing all the churches together. And my dad was amazing. He pioneered a movement out of nothing. He baptized with his own hands about 3,000 people in less than 3 years. 5 years, less than 5 years. He was a pioneer. He was amazing. Hard work ethic, uneducated, school dropout, but just a hard worker. Smart in that way.
What was your relationship like with him? Were you guys close?
Look,
did you talk and communicate?
My dad, his father died when he was 10. So he didn't really know how to be a dad. He was not in any way at all brutal. He was not in any way at all abusive. I did receive my double application of the Board of Knowledge to the seat of education. I did have that on the odd occasion. In fact, I was grounded on my dad realized that grounding me was more of a punishment than giving me a spanking, because the spanking was over with. I could endure that. And after I had packed comic books down my backside for 3 layers, at one stage he realized that he was on a losing battle, so he grounded me, literally. And so I was grounded on an average 2 or 3 days a week, because I was mischievous, I was ambitious, I was a pusher, all right? And I'm a firstborn. Yeah. As a firstborn, I'm the guinea pig.
Paving the way. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But my dad was incredible in that he mentored me in this skill that I have, this talent that was birthed in me, in a way that I don't think he understood. He showed me, in effect, what I would become. He challenged me one time, and this was when I was in my early 20s, and he made the comment to me one day. We were sitting having just a quiet cup of coffee, and he asked me the question. He said, "Son, who feeds the feeder?" I said, "Huh?" He said, "Who feeds the feeder?" He said, "The loneliest job in the world is being a pastor of a church or the leader of an organization, because you've got no one to talk to. You've got things you can't even share with your wife. So who feeds that man? Who feeds the feeder?" And he looked at me and said, "If you could be the person that feeds the feeder, you will always have a place in this world." And I thought, that's profound. I remember my uncle, who was his pastor for many years, who wouldn't let him preach when he was a young man. My dad was 25 when he came to God. He'd been ex-Navy, all right? So my uncle would not let him preach, but he was now the founding missionary. So my uncle and came out, and I heard him say to my dad, he said, "Lloyd, you're one of the wisest men I've ever met." Now this is his mentor saying to him, "You're one of the wisest men I've ever met." So when my dad pulled me aside at that time and said, "If you can just learn who to be the feeder," because I was struggling to find my identity. To be the son of Lloyd Moreau was living in a shadow that I could not compete with. This was not an educated man. This was just a man who knew how to change a nation. That's profound. How do you compete with that? I couldn't. I was the firstborn living in that.
Did you want to? Did you feel you were?
This is me. Yeah, this is actually, you're the first person I've ever told some of this stuff to. So, well done.
There we go.
Yeah, you heard it first right here. All right. No, when I was a teenager, Dad believed in me. 14, you're going to be preaching in 2 weeks' time. Get ready. And I did. I had 7 pages of notes, kind of like that. Took me 7 minutes. It was a failure. It was just, my very first time was just, it wasn't whatever I had imagined. When I sat down, Dad reached out, patted me on the leg, said, "Don't worry, son, it gets better." And he would challenge me again. He said, "You got this one here. Get ready for this. And here's how you can do it." And so he would give me this process, the way that he would do it. Now, I'm privileged to have a little small suitcase that has all of his preaching notes. All of them.
Wow.
Every one that's in existence, I have them. Handwritten.
What a treasure.
All right? And I said to my mother one time, I was looking at this, I looked at her and I said, "Mom, Dad had to be anointed because not even God can read these notes." He was left-handed and they were scribbled. I said, there was no way he could preach from these notes. But he did. And so my dad launched a Bible school, and he said, "Come with me, you're gonna learn how to structure this." And so he said, "I'm going on this road trip, I'm taking you out of school, you can come with me." And I would travel with him to watch him interact and lead and inspire and unlock men with dreams and men with a ministry and a calling. So that's the first time that I saw someone actually display what I have come to call the Jethro mantle. And if you're a follower of the Bible, you'll know that Jethro is the father-in-law of Moses. And when Moses was burned out because he was having to do everything for the children of Israel, he went to his father-in-law complaining. And his father-in-law, Jethro, was the first management consultant, an executive coach. He said, "Well, what you're doing is this. What if you tried this?" And so Jethro, unlocked some thinking and some capacity in Moses. And so my dad was doing that with pastors and leaders. He had 54 pastors that he was personally mentoring all at one time.
And so you're traveling with your dad and you're getting this first-hand experience at a very young age. So you're 14?
I was 14, 15. Wow. 15, I left school, didn't get my school seat.
Yeah.
I went to Bible school. I went 1 year, 2 years, and then I left. If I had one place in my life that I would go back and change a decision, it would be that decision to leave home just shy of my 18th birthday and go to the States and go to Bible school. That one decision created what I call the divide in the road, and that's when I went into a place that I call almost, where things almost made sense in my life. I actually wrote a book called Leaving Almost.
Wow.
The journey of a lifetime.
Okay.
And we'll talk about that later on.
Yeah.
But that's when I left fulfillment, or left the path that I was to be on, and went into almost. That changed the course of my life. It changed the level of my growth, the trajectory of my growth. And my mom and dad weren't quite finished with me, but we thought that it was time for me to move.
Mm-hmm.
So it was one of those decisions I made. Off to the States I went, 1 year in Bible school, and then I hit the road. And I started leveraging off of my dad's name, picking up the phone, calling pastors of churches in the organization that we were part of, and booking appointments. The first year I had 3. I was starving to death. Mom and Dad had to support me from New Zealand on a missionary pay. I had a 1969, I think it was, Rambler Classic. I had a guitar and a camera and a suitcase of clothes.
Sounds like lyrics from a song. It's
And
beautiful.
I distinctly remember parking my car behind a barn in Illinois.
Yeah, and sleeping in the car.
Sleeping in the car, and then face washing and washing out of the horse trough.
Wow.
Cold. But I mean, I didn't do it all the time. I remember that one event. I remember dozens of times sleeping in my car in a campground, public campground where trucks were parked. I'd crawl in between trucks to protect myself.
Yeah.
But that first year was hard. Then I learned how to pitch myself. I learned how to use my experience and create my story. And then I began to pick up. And within a matter of a couple of years, I was staying pretty busy.
Yeah. And that was solely speaking to churches?
That was solely speaking to churches. Now, one of the things that my dad, this is before he asked me that question.
Mm-hmm.
All right? But one of the things that I learned from my dad was how to sit and engage with the pastor of a church. And so we would sometimes, the pastor of a church in a small church would just actually invite you in. They couldn't pay you a lot, but they wanted company. They wanted someone to talk to. And I'm a missionary's kid. So I've worked with churches from a very early age with leaders on strategy and vision, and I knew how to have that conversation. Why? Because I traveled with my dad.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I had the model. Why was I going to recreate something? It wasn't because I went out and learned it in a book. I actually felt the flame in real life. So that was a very profound season. I had foolishly got married. It was a mistake. Have 2 incredible boys as a result of that marriage. But that marriage was over, and that season in my life changed. And I was no longer going to travel and speak and preach. But I didn't know what else to do because it's all I'd ever done.
Sure. How long, if you don't mind me asking, did that marriage last?
It was 4 years, 4 or 5 years.
Okay, and so from there, you've now got 2 young.
Yeah, they're in the States.
They're in the States.
I came back here in '86.
Okay.
I moved back to New Zealand in '86, and that's when I said, "What am I going to do?" And I stumbled around a bit. I was lost. Anytime that you go through a divorce, you're going to have a whiplash anyway. I don't care how good you think you are. There's identity issues take place, self-esteem issues, confidence. So, but more than that, I'd never really had a job. I'd only ever had a passion. There's a difference. People with a job, they can get up, go do their 8 hours, go home. A man with a passion doesn't turn off.
So this is when you transitioned into speaking to businesses.
That actually was, I call it a Forrest Gump moment.
Okay.
That happened because I was having a chat with Jim Haney, who was at that time the CEO for Drake New Zealand, who had hired me as a recruitment consultant. And we both knew within a short period of time that was not going to be a sustainable job for me. And he said, I've got someone I'd like you to coach or to help. He didn't use the word coach. Got someone I'd like you to help put a speech together who has to speak at a conference. So it did. And that's what opened up. My very, very first client was the sales team of Henry Norcross, which was a printing company. But my very first...
And this is in NZ?
This is in New Zealand.
Okay, yeah.
But my very first bona fide client was Ernst & Young. And
Wow.
there was the former managing partner had come along to one of my workshops at the request of the HR manager at Ernst & Young, and sat through it, and then sent a message back saying, we got to hire this guy.
You must have
And that's
impressed
how
him. Yeah.
that's how I got into presentation skills. I Forrest Gumped my way into it.
Yeah.
Literally, it's all I knew how to do. And of course, since then, I've trained over 10,000 people in presenting and pitching and communication-related stuff since that time. But
It just sounds like to me, from the outside looking in, it's just a natural trajectory for you. I mean, from the very early years, the training ground, just heading down that path.
look, I think if we all go back to our childhood, we will find that there are DNA seeds as to things that we are passionate about. Sadly, our education system and oftentimes our family put lids on our passion and steer us towards things that they think are safe or acceptable or will provide a foundation of safety. And so as a result of that, we we end up living our life unfulfilled, and we end up in almost.
Yeah.
Our marriages almost work, our finances are almost fulfilling, our careers are almost satisfying. We wake up in happy relationships almost. And the reason why is because we let other people determine who we are to be by their expectations and their story. Our parents especially. My dad released me into telling my story. My mother to this day will still say to me, tell your story. This is your story, not your sister's, not your brother's, not mine. We had our story, so you tell your story. And I think when I'm working with anyone, I say to them, I want to hear your story. Because that story is, if I go back just like you are into childhood, you will find who I am in the DNA of my childhood.
Yeah. It's your identity. Powerful.
And once you know who you are, identity breeds confidence. Confidence leads to significant mindset. Significant mindset leads to influence and impact.
Love it.
And that's just that simple.
Eugene, you're an author as well. Tell me about the book writing process. What was the first? When did you think, I'm going to write a book? What inspired you first for the first book?
I think I heard it a lot when I was running workshops. After about 300 or 400 workshops on presentation skills, I got really bored. I kept
It's
adding
just the same thing.
Yeah. I
quite
kept
repetitive,
adding
yeah.
stuff to it to make it entertain
Okay.
me. And at the end of the day, the poor students weren't getting any training. They were just getting me waffling on. So someone said to me, you should write a book. This was back in 1992, I think. 92, 93. I thought, write a book. So the idea was sitting there. It wasn't until, I think it was 2002, I actually wrote my very first book called The Public Speaker's Little Black Book. And it was designed to be a little thing that would sit in an executive's pocket, and he would pull it out on the way to a conference and have cheat sheets and ideas. So it's an A5 book now. I can still have some. I think you can still buy it. I think you can. And so I'm going to be updating it soon as part of my journey and positioning all of my publishing.
Okay.
So that was the very first book. And then it wasn't but a few years later that I wrote the 13-box presentation workshop in a book. And that was the IP for my 13-box presentation system, which is kind of used by quite a few people around the world. So that
So
was
do you
unique
license
to me.
that system?
No,
out, do you?
foolishly. Look, to me, that's just a lot of work.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I've actually taken licensed material and made some changes myself.
Okay.
So that's just, to me, it's
Give
a
us some
waste.
takes on
Yes,
it.
exactly.
Yeah, right.
So if anyone wants it, bang. It's a really good friend of mine, Sean D'Souza, wrote a fantastic book on it. He's the one who actually gave me the name, the 13-box system. He came to a workshop and he said to me, "You've just given me 13 boxes to freedom." I thought, ooh, I like that. Went out and I registered it right away. 13. So that's how the 13-box presentation system came into being. So I built a lot of products around it and methodology around it. And in that book, I kind of positioned it. And then I began to write a series of different articles. I wrote Dare to Dream Again as a book. And then I pulled it out and I wrote the book that I've just republished called Leaving Almost, based on Dare to Dream Again, but from much more of a Christian faith foundation.
Okay.
On life change and transformation and setting goals and having a compass and making some transition in life. Because I found that most guys in their 40s are waking up saying, "Is this it? Have I arrived? Is this what I can expect? My marriage is not too bad. I got kids that are growing up. Financially, I'm okay. I'm all right. But is this it?"
Yeah. There's a lot of men out there who suffer in silence as well.
They do.
Yeah.
This is why I think in New Zealand, I can't speak, I think Australia's the same as we have such a high rate of suicide.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy.
I know two men that are known to me and my family in the last 2 months.
Last 2 months.
In the last 2 months who have committed suicide in their 40s.
Wow.
One before they celebrated their 50th birthday. Just 1 week shy of a 50th birthday. So look, it's a whole subject that it's a whole podcast series on this subject. But there's an emptiness that sits inside a lot of people, and they try to fill it with things that really don't matter. But they're searching for something. And so that's what prompted me to write this book. And if truth be known, and if I could just do one thing and do one thing only, and if it was gun to your head, one thing you want to do, I would want to travel around the world helping people leave almost. There's just something that's debilitating about waking up every day saying, "I am not fulfilled. My heart doesn't sing." It's not about financial, material wealth. I know people who are extremely wealthy who are extremely unhappy. And I know people who don't have hardly anything, and they wake up and their heart is singing. Why? Because that's fulfilling to them.
I firmly believe that.
Yeah.
If you were to take, say, a group of people and you felt they were in the almost regional area, what would you teach them? I mean, how do they get from, let's say, they're 80% fulfilled, they're almost fulfilled. How would you instruct them?
Well,
what process do you go through?
Four questions that in the book Leaving Almost that is used. And Leaving Almost is a story about a guy named Alex who meets an older man named Oliver, and they begin to have these conversations. Now, people ask me, and I've had a number of people ask me, "Are you Alex?" And I say, a little bit of Alex is in me because he is a consultant, and I based him on my occupation. But he did. And then they said, "Who's Oliver?" And I said, "Well, Oliver is a mix of 2 or 3 different people, but my dad is in there."
Yeah.
And so Oliver is an older man who begins to engage with Alex and leads him in this conversation. And there are 4 questions that Oliver asks him. Well, where am I now? Where would I like to go? How can I get there? And really, what's most important to me on that journey? And so those are the 4 big questions of life. Well, where am I? How would I assess my life? And I've actually found there are about 8 different areas that we assess our life in, all the way from education through to financial to the relationships and self-esteem and these areas, right through. And then you say, where am I? Where would I like to be? What is the goal in each of these areas? What would I like? What would fulfill me? And if we don't know, as Zig Ziglar has often said, been quoted as saying, you can't hit a target you can't see.
Exactly, yeah.
So if you don't know where you're going, then what that means is that you are left at the mercy of those who do know.
So do you think most of us just exist day to day, we're getting through the week, we're working, and then the weekend things are on, whether it's sport, family, and we're not stepping back.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I think most of us live according to another agenda, whether it be marketing. The marketing world tells us what we should look like, how we should smell, what we should taste like, everything. The marketing world tells us, the advertising world tells us basically what our identity should be. And I call it the Kardashian mindset. This is what you should look like. This is what you should dress like. This is what your hair should look like. If you don't have hair, hey, buy a toupee, and you can have this look and this feel. All right, change your hair color. That's kind of what most people live their life by. That there are those who reach this point. They say, no, I don't want that anymore. I need something real for me. I want my own identity. Why do you think we have a plethora of counseling options for people to go and find themselves? Just incredible. So I think you're spot on. I do believe that there is an opportunity through this next generation coming through that my daughter is in that she's 23 and they see through the bull, the pretend. My generation is a product of I'm born in '59, so therefore I'm on the tail end of the baby boomers, and so we grew up in plastic. We grew up in pretense. This generation coming through Shayna's age group, the millennials, so to speak, they actually want reality. They want authenticity. So when I'm working with a group, a company, or an individual, and I have a millennial or 20, 30 something in my group, they will quickly bypass the bull. They will want real, authentic, and therefore when I say to them, look, the reason why I'm talking to you the way that I am is because let me tell you what's happened to me in the 3-year gap of my life, 3-year space of my life. I found out that I was extremely unwell. I had developed type 2 diabetes, and I didn't know what that meant, and so therefore it affected my body. I began to lose my energy levels. I lost my ability to drive my business. I had built up 2 companies and around my brand, so that was a mistake. Don't build it around you. Build a company around something else that if you're not there, it still works. Otherwise, you just got a very expensive job.
Yeah, so true.
So I had done that. I built up, don't call them companies, brands. A reasonably recognized brand in Eugene Moreau. And so I was working, and I was saying that I had that, but I lost my energy, my drive. I knew intellectually what to do. I didn't have the engine, didn't know no petrol in my tank. And so as a result of that, my business began to go downhill. I survived off my reputation for 5 years with no marketing. It was just the momentum of business networking in the early 90s.
That you had built up.
I built up momentum and brand recognition. 2 articles in Management Magazine about me. So all of that was momentum. Then I didn't do anything. I did not do any business development because it was coming to me. No marketing, it was coming to me. Then all of a sudden, it just began to go downhill. So that's when I started saying to people, hey, you can have a grow, you can climb, but at some stage you're going to reach a plateau, and then you're going to start declining, and then you will start dying, and then you will decay. That's the law of life. Well, that's what happened to me.
So what period of time was this? You'd been doing all these workshops.
Yeah, it started in 2005.
Okay.
In 2005, I began to notice that it wasn't coming at me anymore, and I was really tired. I was tired in my head, tired in my heart. I got married that same year, and I can tell you that the flashpoint was just before we got married, just 1 week before I got married. I had $35,000 worth of work go flying off my radar. And when that flew off my radar, it got canceled for whatever the reason. I can't remember what the reason was. 2 companies. But I knew I was in trouble because I looked and there was nothing in my pipeline. And I was getting married. And I had no guarantee of money coming in. Now, I thought, where did it all go?
Because it had always been there for the last 5 years.
I never had a problem.
Yeah.
I remember walking in my backyard one time saying, I will never have a problem. I was earning $5,000, $6,000 a week. Just in running workshops.
And then it just changed.
It's gone. In a matter of just 5 years, it was all gone. And then, so in 2006, when I was diagnosed, 2007 and 8, I was struggling. I was back and forth to Australia doing some contract work with the company. And then, but my energy was gone. My focus was gone. I wasn't able to concentrate. And what I did not realize was that I had entered into a burnout state. And when you're burned out, the challenge is being able to concentrate properly and use discipline to do what you have to do because you're burned out. There's no energy. And so you're suffering. I can't tell you how many people I've met in the last 2 years that I have just described.
Going through
They are brilliant. Yeah. They are brilliant people. They are brilliant people. They are wonderful people. They're burned out. They're going through the motion right now. They can't make hard decisions. It's just a challenge for their business.
There's no capacity left.
Exactly. That's it.
Yeah.
So 2010, it all came crashing down on me. Everything came crashing down. Now, you got to understand, I'd had nationwide branded clients at the highest level, at a CEO level, but everything came crashing down. And I remember distinctly sitting at a traffic light with Shireen driving because I couldn't drive. It was just too much for me to drive. And I started crying for no reason. Just crying. Sobbing. She said, "What is wrong?" I said, "I don't know." And at that time, I was incapacitated. I couldn't work. I couldn't think. I couldn't win clients. I couldn't engage a client. My weight had blossomed out. I was just in a bad place. I couldn't, and because I couldn't generate revenue, I had a tax bill I couldn't pay, and I got bankrupted. IRD bankrupted me. And then I just went into a season of depression. It was such a dark, black place. I fully understand how people arrive at this place where they don't want to live anymore, because I was there. And my wife actually called some friends and said, "You better come. I think this guy's going to do something stupid."
Did you have suicidal thoughts?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I had the pills to do it.
Wow.
Had the pills to do it. So that I began to pull my way through that. In 2013, I was pulling out. And just as I was getting cleared, I'd done my 3 years, basically, and through my bankruptcy and had survived somehow. I had a heart attack. And that was, come on, the third shoe dropped, you know. So I threatened someone to write a book. I said, "I think I'll write a book, How to Survive Complete Financial Collapse, Depression, and a Heart Attack and Still Want to Live." And they said, "You should do that." I said, "I'm not going to do that," but that should have been.
So when did you have the heart attack? What year?
2013. I was sitting on a train. I had won a contract or won an employment contract to be the sales manager for the YMCA, and I was responsible for training all of their fitness centers and all the salespeople, leading them in strategy and development, kind of coming back into life again. And I was on a train heading into the city when it started. And I got off the train and would walk to the red bus to take up to Gray Street up top there. And when I walked into the office, I said to my colleague, I said, "Man, I don't feel good." He took one look at me, he said, "Sit down." He started opening my collar and he ran across the street to where the ambulance place is and ran back and said, "I got to call him." He couldn't take a walk in.
You're kidding me. They're like, "Call us." Oh,
so,
my goodness.
and so it was in hospital and they went through and they caught it as it was starting to spike up.
Yeah.
And they stopped it. There's no damage to my heart. I've been completely cleared. My mom put out the word on the network. Around the world, people were praying for me. So that was and I said, okay, this has got to stop.
Yeah.
Whatever's going on here has got to stop. We made a change, and we took off to the States, and then we had another tragedy in our family, and that brought us back to New Zealand. And then I said, okay, now what am I going to do? And I went back to the beginning. Right back. I had worked with companies on strategy. I had worked with companies on rebranding. These are all at the highest level. And I loved it. And I had traveled the world. I'd worked in 8 different countries. I had worked with country managers for insurance companies. I had gone and recruited a CEO for a company in London. I had done some incredible things. And I went right back to the beginning. And this is the question that did it for me, Kevin. And I encourage you, if you're listening, I encourage you to ask yourself this question. If I could walk into any room, any business network, anywhere in the world, and know that I would be in the top 5 of my game in that room, top players in the world are in there, what's that one thing that I know I'm the best at?
What a great question.
And you know what it was? Presentation skills. I knew, without a doubt, that my brand, my opportunity in life, was built on my ability to help other people speak about their business or speak about their passion. So I took away all the fluff and I went right back to the beginning.
It was the calling, the one true
That's
calling.
it. I know beyond the shadow of a doubt, God gifted me to stand in front of an audience and engage them and inspire something inside them, whatever that may be. I just know it.
Beautiful. 1 second. Producer Ray is trying to get my attention.
Just winding it up, yeah.
Oh, okay. Wait, how are we going for time?
It's 41.
Yeah, okay.
Wow.
Mate, we're going to need a part 2. We are going to need a part 2. And part 2, we're back. Let's segue into what you're currently doing now.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I went back to, if I could be one thing, that would be number one. What could I do best? Presentation was it. So I went right back to the beginning and I said my greatest joy in my professional career was building this original brand. And it was actually called Eugene Moreau Effective Presentations. And I thought, I'll go back to that. It's the one thing I know I stand out. I could hold my head high in any room. And I said, I'll just call it Eugene Moreau Presentation Master.
I like that.
And what I focus on is I help good speakers become platform masters. And there's a subtle difference between someone who just stands and occupies a space. That's a good speaker, but then to be a platform master means you take ownership of that platform. You know what you're doing. It could be just a room like this, or it could be a stadium. You know how to own the platform. And there are principles, there are disciplines that if you practice them effectively, they become permanent. And that became one of my major songs that I sing, so to speak, or things I teach is practice makes permanent, not perfect. So a lot of times people are practicing the wrong things and they become embedded. So when you're speaking on a platform, there are certain disciplines. I've seen some brilliant speakers, brilliant people with brilliant things to say, but the way they delivered it sabotaged their message. Their feet were not disciplined. So I teach people that if you will control your feet, you'll control the rest of your presentation. They don't get it, so I have to show them how to do that. That's part of being a platform master. So that led me to begin to write a book. And I tell the story. You can read the book or hear the story at another time, called The Art of War for Public Speaking, which is built on the principles of Sun Tzu, the disciplines of warfare and strategy.
But it's for public speaking.
But it's for public speaking. So
Wow.
I foolishly thought that it would be easy to write. I said, no one's written a book like this. This is a big market. I now know why no one wrote a book like this. It's challenging to take a lot of those principles and put it just for platform mastery. But we've done it. And so The Art of War for Public Speaking will be released in early 2020, I'd say January, February. I
love how it's elusive.
Yeah.
Because these things can.
It wasn't as easy as I thought.
Yeah.
I'm in the final stages of design and edit right now, and then it's got an audio program that goes with it and a journal process that goes with it. So it's a complex little project. But that's the way I love doing things now. I love to have a book, a journal process, and an audio program that fills in all the gaps. And that's a package that you can buy. And so that platform I'm developing for that.
And you find, instead of just reading a book or just listening to the audio or just journaling, it's the three, the tripod, the pillars that'll really.
Look, I think it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
I'm a slice of the market. I listen to audiobooks. I will do some journaling.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 12 or 15 moleskins that I filled with ideas and things.
Okay.
And I will read. The older I get, and my eyes have changed, so I've got to find the slice in these glasses to read. But I will listen to audiobooks more now than I do anything.
Yeah.
At one stage, I had a
Do
library.
you pause and take notes?
Yeah, I hit the bookmark,
Okay.
and then I'll go back and I'll do that.
Correct.
And then sometimes I will buy the book as well. I'll get the audio and I'll buy the book. Oh wow! And I'll find that chapter and I will highlight and make notes. And I find that that's how I learn.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'm a percentage of the market. Most people don't have time to read a book, but I believe that I can make them hungry enough to where they will they'll hear about it, they'll want to see it in action. So the next part of this project that I will be developing will be video modules on how to do this. Short, powerful, succinct, kind of like what you guys do. Just highly effective. People can take 30 to 40 seconds of a sound bite or video bite and say, that's how you do that. I got it.
Yeah.
Now, if I tell them what to practice and how to practice, practice makes permanent.
There you go. Boom.
So-
Hey, just tracking back to what you were saying about the note taking, there's a tool called Google Lens, and you can take a photo, say of a page, and the text is completely editable. So you can copy what you
that's
want.
clever.
And yeah, very cool. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah,
There
that's
you go.
clever.
Google
There you
Lens.
go. And you got that first right here.
You got there first. Okay, fantastic. So the book's coming out January, February, all being finished around that time.
Yeah, there's a 5-chapter or 5 days. It's actually done in days, 31 days.
Sure.
So I have if someone's really interested, they can just email me, and I'll send them the 5 days, so they can get a sample of it.
Where can people get hold of you and have a conversation
You
about?
know, email's probably the easiest.
Okay.
Eugene I'll give you my Eugene Moreau one. Eugene at eugenemoreau.com.
Okay.
LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. You
Okay.
can find me, and then my Facebook, Eugene Moreau.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, thank you so much for your time.
It's been fantastic.
Fantastic conversation. And absolute pleasure having you on.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands.
I hope you got some value from our conversation. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel and hit that bell so you know when we upload the next Authority Nation episode.
From the Lord.